first.
Yes.
And so I was like, I forgot about him being the person at the gate.
Yeah.
But now that kind of makes sense as to how he was able to get everybody on his side. Because Israel seemed to complain a lot.
Yeah, they did. All right, well, welcome to Freedom's Light Discipleship Training. So my papers got messed up last week. Somehow they printed on both sides, and then I don't know what happened. They got messed up, so I got confused. So I wanted to read 2 Samuel chapter 15, starting at verse 1 through 25. Let's just read it straight through to kind of make sure we got the story and before we move on. So we're going to start in 2 Samuel chapter 15, starting verse 1. And it came to pass after this that Absalom prepared him chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. And Absalom rose up early and stood beside the way of the gate. And it was so that when any man that had a controversy came to the king for judgment, then Absalom called unto him and said, Of what city art thou? And he said, Thy servant is one of the tribes of Israel. And Absalom said unto him, See, thy matters are good and right, but there is no man deputed of the king to hear thee. Absalom said, Moreover, oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man which hath any suit or cause might come unto me, and I would do him justice. And it was so that when any man came nigh to him to do him obeisance, he put forth his hand and took him and kissed him. And on this manner did Absalom to all of Israel that came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. And it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said unto the king, I pray thee, let me go and pay my vow which I have vowed unto the Lord in Hebron. For thy servant vowed a vow while I abode at Geshur in Syria, saying, If the Lord shall bring me again indeed to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. And the king said unto him, Go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, As soon as ye hear the sound of the trumpet, then ye shall say, Absalom reigneth in Hebron. And with Absalom went 200 men out of Jerusalem that were called, and they went in their simplicity, and they knew not anything. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices. And the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. And there came a messenger to David, saying, The hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. And David said unto all his servants that were with him at Jerusalem, Arise, and let us flee, for we shall not escape, for we shall not else escape from Absalom. Make speed to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly, and bring evil upon us, and smite the city with the edge of the sword. And the king's servant said unto the king, Behold, thy servants are ready to do whatsoever my lord the king shall appoint. And the king went forth, and all his household after him. And the king left 10 women which were concubines to keep the house. And the king went forth, and all the people after him, and tarried in a place that was far off. And all his servants passed on before him, and all the Harathites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men which came after him from Gath, passed on before the king. So notice those are all pagans. But those are not Israelites, those are pagans who are following him. All right, then said the king to Ittai the Gittite, Wherefore goest thou also with us? Return to thy place, and abide with the king, for thou art a stranger, and also an exile. Whereas thou camest but yesterday, should I this day make thee go up and down with us? Seeing I go whither I may, return thou, and take back thy brethren. Mercy and truth be with thee. And Ittai answered the king and said, As the Lord liveth, and as my lord the king liveth, surely in what place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will thy servant be. And David said to Ittai, Go and pass over. And Ittai the Gittite passed over, and all his men and all the little ones that were with him. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people passed over. The king also himself passed over the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over towards the way of the wilderness. And lo, Zadok also and all the Levites were with him, bearing the ark of the covenant. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had done passing out of the sea. So here the high priest brought the ark of the covenant out of Jerusalem to follow David. And Absalom, I thought, he should have known right then whose side God's going to be on. When you saw that ark going with David, you should have known right there you're sunk. But he ignored the signs. So now David is going to do something remarkable. He tells Zadok the high priest to carry the ark back to Jerusalem. And he says this in verse 25. He said, "If I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me again and show me both it and his habitation." His is with a capital H. So if I find favor in the Lord, he's going to bring me back to Jerusalem so that I can see the ark again and I can see his habitation, because God dwelt in Jerusalem. Verse 26, "But if he thus say, I have no delight in you, behold, here am I, let him do to me as seemed good unto him." And so when I read that, I thought about, talk about surrender. So how many of us have ever come to a place of surrender where, Lord, kill me or change me?
Yeah.
And what if I asked you to leave your spouse, leave your family, leave your job, leave your home, leave your state, leave your nation, to go with the Lord? Would you go? Now, he's not going to ask you to leave your spouse. But he might ask you to leave your state or even your nation or whatever, or your job, and I know I harp on this, but I saw this with the big C. People were, they did whatever to keep from losing their job, and I'm like, but God can provide for you. He can give you a new job if you just trust him. But people, no, they're putting their faith in their job and that big S and.
I watched this week, for King and Country is a Christian group. I watched their story.
Mm-hmm.
And it blew my mind that their dad woke up one day and they were at the lowest point they had ever been. They only had enough to buy tickets to get to the U.S. That's all they had money for. They didn't have a job, they didn't have a house, they didn't have nothing. And all they knew was they had to get to the U.S. so they could do God's work. And they loaded up and left. Without a plan, without where are we going to stay when we get there, where are we going to be. That kind of blows my mind a little bit, because I'm a planner. And I have to have some semblance of what to expect when I get to wherever it is I'm going.
And the only explanation for that is when you hear the voice of the Lord. Yeah. Or in the big C situation, if you hadn't heard from the Lord, you just know that I'm not going to do that, and Lord, you got to provide. Because I'm just not going to do that. But anyway, so I think what this tells us is that David really didn't know how things were going to play out. And do we ever know how things are going to play out? Mm-hmm. No, day to day is just, life happens every day, and we don't know how it's going to play out. And I'm sure that his heart is broken. This is his son. And so I know he's got to be heartbroken. And so what is he to do? Well, he could have raised an army and struck down Absalom. But he didn't. And why? Because this is his son. So he fled before his son. So think about that. Now the hearts of most of the men of Israel were with Absalom, but David still had an army. He still had enough people with him, so he could have put down the rebellion, but he didn't. And so, do you think he fled in fear, or do you think he fled to get away and regroup and think about things and see how God was going to work this out?
I think it would be that, because his heart, where his heart is for his son. I don't, that's what I would think would be, just, let's think about this a little longer before.
He seems at this point more susceptible to do that.
Yeah.
To not necessarily sit back and watch, but sit back and, okay, let me gather my thoughts, let me bring this before God, I screwed up.
Yeah.
Lay at his feet. Whereas before he kind of seemed early on, he was either he was 110% with God, or he was like, I got this, I'm just going to go this way. It seems at this point he's willing to, okay, God, what's next?
No, I think you're right, and I think I see more humility now. And like, especially when he said, let him do to me as seemeth good unto him. I think his back's up against the wall now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I don't see David making deals, right, and trying to bargain with God. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that. Oh, I've done it. I remember, years ago, and I didn't know anything back then, but when my dad was real sick, I remember vividly, and Jeff got so mad at me, but I remember telling the Lord that he could take me instead of my dad. Today, that's just bargaining with God. That's idiocy. But we do that. Mainly out of ignorance. And see, I thought that's why God had to put Abraham to sleep. Remember when he made a covenant with Abraham? He had to put Abraham to sleep. Why? Because Abraham was a human being, and he couldn't keep that covenant. So God put him to sleep and made the covenant basically with himself. With Abraham asleep, because that was a blood covenant unto death, and he knew Abraham couldn't keep it. And so it's just better to surrender than to try to make bargains with God.
Yeah.
Because you ain't gonna win. And we just try to wheel and deal, and it never works. Mm-hmm. So I think David is at that point that, okay, I'm done. And that's when things change. And that's when God can do something with us, is when we're done. And furthermore, David, having royally blown it, he knows he's messed up. And he knows his kids are messed up because of him. And really, how could you not know that? And so in humility and sorrow, I think he's now come to the end of himself, and he has surrendered his fate to Jehovah, even if it's killing. I think he's tired.
Yeah.
I think he's just had all he can take.
Well, because too, his heart is broken, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
you're tired every other way, and then your heart is so broken because of who he's facing as an enemy. It just seems like that's just the ultimate to me. If I was facing my child as the enemy,
Yes.
that would be, okay, I've really messed up. I'm just done.
And to not feel any hope.
Yes.
Because the reason your son is now, or daughter, the reason your child is now coming after you is because you put them in that place.
Position, yeah.
And to me as a parent, that is,
Oh, yeah.
it hurts.
Almost more than you can handle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he's literally trusting Jehovah God with his life, his family, and even his nation. Because if he goes down, the nation's going to go down. So, parents, if you've blown it, don't try to bargain with God. Just surrender your sin, and then surrender your child to God.
Yeah.
And I had kids so young, it's a miracle that they turned out. I mean, really, because I did not know what I was doing. And now I'm amazed, like Olivia said. She said that this morning. She said she was going through she's only 15, right? So she's going through her stuff from the last 5 years, and she said she couldn't believe now, looking back, at how much she's changed since she's gotten saved. And she's like, what was I thinking? And I can so relate to that. Oh my gosh, I was so stupid. I was so dumb. And, you know, you go, what were you thinking? You know, and yes, I have a lot of regrets. You know, I do, I have a lot of regrets. But so as does, I'm sure David does. I mean, you know he does. And, but you know what you have to do? You just have to continually lay down and surrender before him. And say, Lord, you know, here, Lord, you've got to fix this because I can't. And you can't go back and undo what's been done. So David can't go back and undo what's been done. All he can do is just surrender to the mercy of the Lord. And you know, we can do better going forward if we surrender to him and we let him heal all the brokenness in our lives and the lives of the people that we've hurt. Because we can't lose sight of that David has hurt these people. Because that's what sin does. Sin doesn't just destroy you, it destroys everybody around you. And so David, now he's surrendering his hurt, he's surrendering his nation, he's surrendering everything. And he doesn't know how it's going to turn out. Because he's not even sure that God is on his side. But I tell you what, if God can take a girl who thinks she's a boy and who later marries a man, or a woman, as a man, because she thinks she's a man, so she marries a woman, and then has a sex change and takes hormones, and everybody believes she's a man. Nobody knows she's even a woman. And if God can get a hold of her, and change her, him, it, and save her, him, it, and you know the video, Barbara listened to the video I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If God can do that, then he can do anything.
Yes, he can.
And you know what she did? She left everything. She left her love her for life. She said she loved her. And they were married for 10 years. She left her. She left everything. She went back and had everything reversed that she could. You know, she told the Lord, she said, if you do not do this, help me with this, she said, I will commit suicide.
Yeah. She surrendered it all.
She surrendered it all.
She did. Lock, stock, and barrel.
Yes, she did. So David, I think he's in that same place. He's humbly surrendering to God. He's calling on him to fix this. And so what about Absalom? Well, let's see. So David's fled with anyone who would side with him into the wilderness, and now he has sent the high priest and the ark back to Jerusalem, telling God, basically, you got to fix this or I'm going to die. And he tells Zadok, the high priest, to be a spy and to have his sons spy as well. So let's pick up in verse 27. It says, the king said also unto Zadok the priest, art not thou a seer? Return into the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Amaz, thy son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will tarry in the plain of the wilderness until there come word from you to certify me. Zadok therefore and Abiathar carried the ark of God against Jerusalem, and they tarried there. And David went up by the ascent of Mount Olivet and wept as he went up, and had his head covered, and he went barefoot. And all the people that was with him covered every man his head, and they went up weeping as they went up. And one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Now, if you don't think David's heart is absolutely broken, then you're sadly mistaken. Because in verse 30 and 31, we see his brokenness, and David is weeping with his head covered and his feet bare. And David is publicly calling on the Lord to intervene in the situation. Publicly.
31's kind of confusing to me.
31. And one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Ahithophel was one of his chief counselors. And so now Ahithophel has sided with Absalom and turned on David. So now David's asking the Lord to cause his counsel to
Fall apart.
fall apart. Now Mount Olivet is a ridge east of Jerusalem across the Kidron Valley. It's about 2,710 feet above sea level. It says it offers a panoramic view of the city. So he's up on a mountain and he can see the city below him. So he's up there weeping, covering his head, barefooted, crying out to God for mercy. So I want us to look at the significance of this and understand what the significance is of this mountain. And one is the prophet Ezekiel saw the glory of the Lord depart from the temple and rest on the Mount of Olivet. Now I was in Ezekiel 11:23. You know, this is a relatively small area. You know what I mean? So you can pretty much track all these same places all throughout, history. So Ezekiel saw the glory of the Lord depart from the temple and rest on the Mount of Olives, Mount of Olives. Jesus often visited the mount, especially in times of prayer. In Luke 22:39 and 44, is where he prayed before his arrest in Gethsemane. That same place. Jesus began his entry into Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives in Luke 19:29 through 38. After his resurrection, Jesus ascended into heaven from that same mountain. Acts 1:9 through 12. According to prophecy, Jesus will return to that mountain on Zechariah 14:4. So what is David? David is a type of Christ. And he's a foreshadow of Christ. And he is seeking the Father on that same mount that Jesus did, in humility and all sincerity, just as Jesus did. And so David has come to the point of surrender to God. And what did Jesus do? He surrendered to God. And he said, now, he hopes this cup's going to pass from him, but if it doesn't, he still surrendered. I mean, I was thinking about that yesterday. Can you imagine? I mean, you're about to be crucified and you know exactly all the details of what's going to happen to you and you still surrender to do that? Well, I can't do that. There's no way. So, but yeah, we've all got to come to the point of surrender. Didn't you opened up the class with, didn't he say in that video, said if you're willing to, you know what my flesh did when I heard that?
You crawled.
Are you crazy? Literally, I had a reaction. Like everything within me rose up and like, are you crazy? And I've heard stories like that where people, were told to do that. God said, well, just like he said to the rich man. He said, sell all that you have and come follow me. And so, I've heard, praise God, he's never asked me to do that. But what I'm saying is, you know what? None of us can do that in the flesh. We can only do it when we surrender to him and we let him have full control and we let him, lead and guide us. And there's just no way. So, David's back is up against the wall. He's desperate. He's a man. He's a sinful man. He's broken by life and he's broken by the circumstances. And like I said, I think he's tired. I think he's tired physically. I think he's tired of the sin. I think he's tired of life. I think he's tired of Satan stealing everything from him.
He's tired of making mistakes.
He's tired of making mistakes. And he's come to that point of full surrender. So, Lord, even if you kill me. Isn't that what Job said? So if you're gonna surrender, see, we don't wanna surrender to suicide. See, some people get to that point of surrender, and they'll take their own lives. So we don't wanna get to that point, but we wanna surrender to the Creator. Surrender to the one that made you and knows you and loves you.
The other thing I thought of with that lady, when you've been given a word from the Lord that you know is from the Lord, it's so much easier to surrender.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because if it's just a thought of yours, but when you know, like that woman, she knew what God told her.
Yes.
And she changed everything about her life just standing on that word.
But at the same time, she said, if you don't help me, I'm gonna commit suicide. Because what he was asking her to do was so incredibly hard, she knew she couldn't do it in herself.
Yes.
And don't you know, David's in that very place. Listen, and sometimes suicide sounds pretty good. Till you wake up in hell, then it ain't so good.
No.
So, and we know this was a great blow to David. And listen, I've experienced some blows, and I've experienced some betrayals more times than I can count. And I'll tell you one thing, following the Lord and working to further His kingdom and sharing His truth gets people riled up. And it seems like somebody's always turning on us. And I think I've kind of had a revelation by talking to a friend that when you're faced with truth, which we all are, especially in this church, when you're faced with truth, you have a decision to make. And I've seen them face the truth and turn away and leave and never come back, and I've seen them surrender. And it is one or the other. And I think that's why we've had so much conflict in our ministry, is because we just tell the truth, and that truth convicts, and then that person has to either, get on board with the Lord and surrender, or they leave and they get mad. And in the midst of that is conflict, and it's not fun. And I just ordered a book called Dealing with Conflict in the Church, because I had never had any kind of teaching on handling conflict. And I'm really not that good at it. And I've got a quick temper, and so I need to learn how to deal with conflict, because, after we've been in ministry all these years, now I need to learn. But you know what? Isn't God good? He doesn't throw us to the wayside. He's just now saying, okay, well, now it's time for you to learn some conflict resolution.
Well, that's a book idea.
Yeah. So I'll say, if you're in ministry, mark my words, it's going to happen. It just is. And Satan's going to send people to destroy you. I mean, that's just his MO. That's what he does, and that's what he's doing here to David. That's the whole deal with Bathsheba. He just constantly sends somebody to trip you up. And the only way I can say that we have survived, and if you know us, even this last year we've had conflict, and we've had conflict that came in between us. And the only way we can ever get through it is to seek God, and to go to Him, and to seek His strength, and to surrender ourselves. Because if we don't, then we'll end up divorced. Because guess what? We're human beings. And the only way a human being is going to make it is to surrender to God, or you just won't make it. And there's just no other. That's it. Surrender or die. And so we have to surrender every situation to Him, because it's the only way. And I'll tell you, I should have been dead a long time ago.
It makes me think in Judges, we just went through that, and how every man did what was right in his own eyes. Oh, okay, we got a problem.
Yeah.
It's every man did what was right.
Exactly.
It just continued to be a problem.
So I thought, you know what? When I got a problem, I can go to this story.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, I can get hope, because David messed up. Well, I messed up. David found forgiveness. I can find forgiveness. David messed his kids up. I've messed my kids up. You know what I'm saying? There is so much in this story that can help every one of us. And then what happens? Then we're going to find out that God had mercy on David. So then God's going to have mercy on me. Because yes, David was a man after God's heart, his own heart. But guess what? I'm after God's heart. David wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect. So it gives us hope. It gives us encouragement that God is for us and not against us. So this verse delivers a crushing blow to David. That last verse about Ahithophel, because he was one of his closest and wisest counselors. And like I said, we've had some of the closest people to us that have abandoned us and have stabbed us in the back. It happens. And I want us to take a quick look at 2 Samuel 16:23. So we're going to skip ahead, but I want us to see who Ahithophel is. All right, so let's look at 2 Samuel 16:23. And it says, "The counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom." So what this is saying is that Ahithophel's advice carried such authority that people treated him as though it came directly from God.
Wow.
So he was very important to David. So now here's the big question. Was Ahithophel really hearing from God all this time? Like David and Absalom thought. David and Absalom both trusted him explicitly. So do you think he was really hearing from God? Because now this is a great blow to David. And listen, I've been there. I have been there. How can this person that I thought was following the Lord, that was so godly, that was so, a good person, and now they have stabbed me in the back? I don't know what to do with that. And I'm sure that's where David is. Oh my gosh, I thought he heard from God. I thought he was a godly man. Now he stabbed me in the back. He's siding with Absalom. What is David supposed to do with that? I had somebody tell me that God told them not to be my friend anymore. What do you do with that? Now Absalom, think about it from his standpoint. Oh, this man of God, this man who hears from God, he's siding with me. He's come with me. Oh, so that puffed Absalom up. Oh my gosh, this man of God's on my side, so God must be on my side.
So what it makes me think when you say that is you said that the ark went with David. So we know the right side.
But you can imagine how ecstatic Absalom was
Oh, yeah.
that this man of God came with him. So really, I want y'all to grasp the seriousness of this situation and how really astounding it is.
It makes it more confusing.
And just think, Absalom is ecstatic. Oh, this man of God's come with me. And David is befuddled. How can this man of God turn against me?
Right. What's the right side?
What's the right side? Well, bottom line is, he's a man. And even the people that I think are so godly and hear from God, and I know they hear from God, guess what? They can still mess up. And guess what? You're looking at a big mess up right here.
Only y'all are saved.
So people will betray us. Christians will betray you. And people take sides. And sometimes they take sides based on the wrong information. I've had that happen. They didn't come to me and say, they just heard somebody else, and they didn't come to me and find out what my side was, and they took a side and they left. And they took the wrong side, because it was lies. Okay? So it's important that we get both sides of the story before making a decision. And even then, you better take sides with God. And you better know what the truth is, no matter what the situation is. And you better seek Him and ask Him, what side should I take? Because it's not always the way it looks, as we see here with Ahithophel. So David prayed for Ahithophel's counsel to be turned into foolishness. So why? Well, because David knows how wise Ahithophel is. He ain't no dummy. He's a wise man, and David's worried what he's going to tell Absalom. Ahithophel could spell defeat for David.
So he needs something supernatural.
He needs something supernatural to happen, because Ahithophel's a very wise guy. He's a very smart guy. He's probably a very tactical guy. He's probably a military man, and he could, just in the natural, he's got enough knowledge, enough talent where he could bring David down. So you're right. David needs something supernatural to happen. He needs, as he prayed, that Ahithophel's counsel will be turned into foolishness. So you get someone against you like that, and then you're pretty much done in the flesh without God's intervention. But know this: God never lets evil prevail. He always brings truth out eventually. Now, it may take a while, but it's always going to come out. And that should be a great comfort to us. The truth will always come forward. And God will always bring light to wrongdoing. And again, it may take a while. And I don't know why it always takes so long, but sometimes it does. But eventually the truth is always known. Because that's what the Bible says. So verse 32, and it says, and it came to pass that when David was come to the top of the mount where he worshipped God, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat rent and earth upon his head. So, again, David's doing what we all must do at times like this. And we've got to go to the mountaintop. We've got to go to the Father in the name of the Son. We've got to seek His guidance, seek His instructions, seek His will, seek His mercy. We have to ask Him to intervene and to fix the situation and to deal with everybody involved. And we got to ask Him to bind the spirits of deception, division, confusion, which demons are so famous for. And we have to understand God is not the author of confusion. And He's not the author of division. See, anything that brings division, you know is not of God. That's straight from the pits of hell. Anything that brings division is straight. So if you're trying to figure out, is this of God or not? Well, is it bringing division? Then it's not of God. And what comes to my mind is the Bible says, that Jesus said, you'll be mother against mother-in-law, blah, blah, whatever, father against son. But see, that's still Satan bringing division. That's not God bringing division. It's Satan bringing division. It's people taking sides. One's taking side with the devil, one's taking side with God. So that's still Satan bringing that confusion. So the man named Hushai the Archite, he's a loyal friend and advisor. And so he arrives in the morning. His coat is torn. He's got dust covering his head. And we know these are traditional signs of grief and solidarity. So that's what he's showing to David, as David, I'm on your side. And This is significant because every scripture is there for a purpose. And we don't know yet why this is going to be so significant. Other than on the surface, I'm sure it gave David comfort to see that, okay, good, I've got a friend, right? I got somebody that's on my side instead of turning on me. And so David's going to find great comfort with this. And the guy obviously has been seeking God up on that mountain too. And don't you know that made him feel better to have somebody that hasn't abandoned you, hadn't changed sides. And so he's got to be somewhat encouraged by that. So David is doing what we all must do in times like this. We got to go to the mountaintop. And we got to go to the Father in the name of the Son. And we got to seek His guidance, His instruction, His will, and His mercy. And I got a call. So we got to ask Him to intervene and to fix the situation and to deal with the people involved. And then ask Him to bind the spirits of deception. See, David is laying out for us how we need to do it. So first of all, we got to surrender. We got to go to the mountaintop. Got to seek the Father in the name of the Son. We need to bind the spirits of deception, division, and confusion, which demons are so famous for. When everybody has abandoned you and changed sides, which happens, you know what? You just go to the mountaintop and you hang on to God. So let's see. In verse 33, is that where I think I went? Stop there. Okay, it said, unto whom David said, if thou passest on with me, then thou shalt be a burden unto me. What? What's David talking about? This man is siding with David, and he's telling him, you're going to be a burden to me. If you stay with me, you're going to be a burden to me. So David thinks that Hushai could better serve him if he goes back to Jerusalem, perhaps to counteract Ahithophel. So I think maybe we get the impression reading the Bible that things were different back then than they are now, but guess what? It's the same. People were the same since Adam and Eve. And the government today was just as it was back then in many ways. And the king had people around him. He had advisors that he relied on. Do you think Trump doesn't have advisors? Of course he does. He has all these advisors. Listen, no man can do it himself. Trump can't do it himself. David couldn't do it himself. No king could do it all himself. And so David had eyes and ears all over the place. Trump has eyes and ears all over the place. They have advisors, and they're all working towards one goal. So Hushai evidently was famous as a counselor in David's cabinet, you could say. And he was, so David says, man, you'll be more useful to me if you go back to Jerusalem and you try to find out what's going on with Absalom and come back and tell me than if you stay here with me. And what that made me think was that we all have gifts and talents, and we need to be willing to serve the king wherever the king sends you. So if he sends you out to, Timbuktu, that's where you gotta go. So David is sending Hushai to do important work of espionage, and perhaps even to save the country. So verse 34, but if thou return to the city, and say unto Absalom, I will be thy servant, O king, as I have been thy father's servant hitherto, so will I now also be thy servant. Then mayest thou for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. David just asked him to lie. What are we going to do with that? Anybody?
Well, war.
That was gonna be what I was gonna say, all fair's in love and, all fair, the old saying is all's fair in love and war.
Unless they're married, that's what you're supposed to have.
So war is a treacherous affair. And I say this, if no Christian participated in war, then we would be under the Germans right now. We would be speaking German right now. So sometimes to fight evil, you gotta find it wherever it's gonna be found. And it can't always be done honorably. So there are tactics you have to use to fight evil, and David is using those. And that's precisely what David is engaging here. He's in a war. And so he's using war tactics. And David is telling one of his chief advisors to go back and tell Absalom, I will be your servant, and for him to call Absalom king. Tell him, I have been your father's servant until now, but I will be your faithful servant, Absalom. How do you think Israel knows where to go bomb these people? How do you know that they can pinpoint them riding down the road and bomb their car as they ride down the road? Because there's people on the inside telling them where these people are. So I can't fault David for telling him to lie, because this is war. So in verse 34, but if thou return to the city and say unto Absalom, I will be thy servant, O king, as I have been thy father's servant hitherto, so will I now also be thy servant, then mayest thou for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. So you're going to have to go lie and make Absalom believe that you're on his side so that you can gather intel so you can come back and tell me, because Ahithophel is a very powerful, smart man. And Ahithophel can bring me down. So verse 35, and hast thou not there with thee Zadok and Abiathar the priests? Therefore it shall be that what things soever thou shalt hear out of the king's house, thou shalt tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. So in other words, Zadok and Abiathar are there as spies. Absalom think they're on his side, but they're not. And so he's saying, okay, you're not going to be alone. You've got Zadok and Abiathar, and anything that you hear, go tell them, and they'll report back to me. And that was continuing his instruction to Hushai. And David's assuring him that yeah, you're not going to be alone. You're going to have allies there. So go back to the palace and just do your best job at acting. But then how do we know that all these people are going to be on David's side? Because Zadok and Abiathar had already shown loyalty by bringing the Ark of the Covenant out of the city to follow David. But then David told them to stay behind and take the Ark back. And their respected position gave them access to court life without suspicion. And you know what? You really don't know. I mean, all you can do is kind of hope, you know, from the way they were acting, from what they did, the way they followed him. So you just have to hope that they're going to stay on his side. So verse 36, behold, they have there with them their two sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son, and by them you shall send up unto me everything that ye can hear. So they're going to use these guys' sons to come and report to David. So David continues in his instruction to Hushai. So basically he's saying, when you get to the palace, notice that they have there with them their two sons, Zadok and Zadok's son and Abiathar's son, and so you send them back to me and report back to me. So evidently David knows somehow that their sons are siding with him as well. And they will benefit Hushai in getting information so they can work as messengers. So basically what David is doing, he's setting up a spy ring. And a spy ring really is needed in every war. Without a spy ring, you're not going to win a war. And that's just the bottom line.
I can tell you right now, I'm not gonna volunteer to be a spy.
Just,
I'd much rather just go face the enemy in battle, just take my chances. With bullets and bombs and artillery
yeah,
shots.
spies, they torture you a lot.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, my head's blown off, it's you might be slowly tortured to death over a few days.
Or weeks, because you know information, they need to know what you know.
So their fathers, the priests, can give them information to pass on. And so this is the plan that David set up for Hushai to serve in Absalom's court and pass on information to David secretly. And then let's not forget, again, we're talking about David's son. This is a war between a father and a son. This is a horrible situation. I mean, you think you got bad relationship with your kids, okay? I mean, this is over the top, right? And yet David's not acting in violence. But this is war, and Absalom's going to kill him if he doesn't fight back. So he's got to do something to protect himself. So what I want us to see is he's not retaliating. He hasn't told anybody, go shoot, or go kill Absalom, go stab Absalom. No, he hasn't done that. He just said, go gather information. And so he's trying to be wise and trying to play this out carefully. And I personally can't imagine what he's going through. I mean, the torment that he's got to be in a war with your own child. I mean, can there anything be worse on the face of the earth than that? Verse 37, so Hushai, David's friend, came into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. So here we just get confirmation that Hushai is in fact David's friend, and he comes into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. And so if you put yourself in this position, how would you know who to believe? Like, think about Absalom. Are you gonna believe him? Are you gonna believe Hushai? Everybody's thinking, nobody knows who to believe. And I think David could believe Hushai because he had left Jerusalem and he had followed David. But can you imagine how hard it would be to really know who's on your side?
I think Absalom believes they're on his side in his pride. And his pride lied to him and said, all of them are with me, even my father's trusted friends.
I think you're right. Absolutely right.
And his pride, that's why he'll end up succeeding, is because his pride said, oh, why wouldn't they switch over to me?
Right. And so many had.
Exactly.
Which had just fed that pride. So Absalom came into Jerusalem. So David has fled from Jerusalem. So Absalom's able to come into Jerusalem, and then Hushai is come into Jerusalem. So now we're going to be starting 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 1, and we got 5 minutes. So 2 Samuel 16, 1. And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And I thought about, remember when David sought to show kindness to Saul's family, Ziba, if you remember that, Ziba was the one who informed David about Mephibosheth. Remember when David said, is there anybody of Saul's line that is still alive? And Ziba said, yes, there is one, and told him about Mephibosheth. And so David then restored Saul's land, remember, to Mephibosheth, and gave Mephibosheth some of Saul's land. And he appointed Ziba and his sons and servants to work that land for Mephibosheth. And that was in 2 Samuel 9 through 10. So here, this same man shows up again, meeting David with donkeys, bread, raisins, fruit, and wine. And he claims that Mephibosheth stayed in Jerusalem, hoping to reclaim Saul's throne. Okay, so the plot's getting thicker here.
So the enemy of my enemy is.
And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So now Ziba had been kind to David, David had been kind to him, and of course Mephibosheth, remember he was dropped as a child by his nurse when she was fleeing, thinking that they were going to come kill Mephibosheth, because that's what they would do if a king, remember Saul died, and so they would just kill the whole family, so nobody could come and kill the new king and stuff. And so it was typical for in pagan societies to just kill the whole family. So the nurse fled, thinking that they're going to come try to kill Mephibosheth, and then she dropped him, and so he was lame in his feet from then on. But remember, he sat at David's table, and he was very humble, because he knew he was only alive because David allowed him to live. And so now Ziba's coming telling David that Mephibosheth has betrayed you. David has to be reeling. Now, I don't know whether David believed him or not, but I would, wouldn't you? And he had trusted Ziba all this time, and Ziba had, been, David gave him land to work and all that kind of stuff. I would believe him. But what I'm getting out of this is, and as we'll see as the story progresses, you know what? We need to not be so quick to believe bad things about people. And I have made this a practice of mine, because being in the church, boy oh boy, I just won't believe it until I hear it from the horse's mouth. And go to the horse and ask him. Because you'll save yourself a lot of trouble if you just go and ask.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure and go to that person and ask him if it's true. Because like I told you, I had this guy, start emailing me. He was coming to church here. He started emailing me, telling me he was in love with me and all this kind of stuff. Well, there was some people that got wind of it here, and they blamed me, and they never came and talked to me, and they left the church. I didn't have anything to do with it. And 2 weeks later, the guy died. Had a massive heart attack and died. So we need to make sure that we're on the right side, and we need to not be too quick to listen to gossip, and we need to make sure that we know what we're talking about. And we need to be careful not to form opinions when you haven't even talked to the person, and you don't even know where they stand. If those people had come to me and read the emails, they'd know that I didn't do anything. It was all out in the email. I still got the emails if anybody wants to read them. I didn't do anything. He talked about, it was very clear. He talked about, how he saw me and loved me and all this stuff, there was nothing in that email to implicate me. It was all what he thought, what he felt, what he saw, and so I had nothing to do with that. But yet people blame me. So David should inquire and find out if what Ziba is saying is true or not. And if he couldn't talk to Mephibosheth in person under these horrible circumstances, and I know that the horrible circumstances he's under, you're just going to think, oh my gosh, Mephibosheth has turned on me. But we're going to see that David, he doesn't do this, he doesn't try to get to the truth, and he just believes what Ziba said, and we're going to find out that it's not true. And we'll have to wait until next week to find that out. So these are great stories that we can apply to our lives and we can learn from. And if you've lived any length at all, you know that all this stuff is going to happen to every one of us in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's going to happen at work, it's going to happen at school, it's going to happen at church, it's going to happen everywhere. And we can learn from these stories and learn how to deal with it.